This is Cruise Radio.
I cruise a lot, and I always sail with travel insurance. You should, too. Get a free quote today at tripinsurance.com.
Here we go.
Broadcasting from the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. This is Cruise Radio.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Doug Parker. Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Cruise Radio. Very happy to have you here, my friend. A review of MSC Seashore from Kurt today from Port Canaveral, a 4-night cruise there. Staff writer Richard Sims standing by with cruise news. And tripinsurance.com's Dan Skilken is here to field a couple of your questions. Big show today, kicking things off with staff writer Richard Sims. Hey, Richard.
Hey, Doug.
We start with another change at Carnival Cruise Line.
And this time it's not a change to the rewards program. I'm thrilled to report that this one is being greeted with far less drama than what we saw unfolding over the last week or two. And I'm pretty sure somewhere the line's brand ambassador, John Heald, is probably grateful because for at least 10 minutes, people stopped messaging him about the Carnival rewards program and took a moment to thank Carnival for changing from Pepsi to Coke. That's right. Carnival is switching back to Coke products. So a few years back, the line ditched Coke products in favor of Pepsi, and that brought about a huge backlash. For weeks, people were complaining about this. And now the decision has been reversed, and it seems like, yeah, there are some people who are unhappy, but the vast majority seem to be very excited about this and very happy about this. I mean, this is a huge deal for both Coke and Carnival. It's not just an endorsement. It's millions and millions of dollars on the line with something like this. Coke will now be served across the entire fleet of Carnival ships starting later this summer. No exact date there, and they haven't released the full list of which products will be carried, but we know like Diet Coke and Coke will certainly be on that list. John Heald said he would release release in the coming days the full list of products. And, you know, there's a lot of money tied up in something like this. And it makes sense because if you're going to be on that ship for an entire week, let's say you're a Pepsi drinker and now you're being quote unquote forced to drink Coke. The hope is by Coca-Cola that you will say, hey, I like this. And you will, switch your loyalties over to Coke. And that's worth a lot of money to them. So this is a big deal. And, who knows if it'll last a few years from now. Carnival might go back to both companies and say, hey, make us an offer. And the highest bidder will win. That's how these things work. But for right now, Coke is back.
And in other Carnival-related news, the company just filed a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against one of their shipyards.
Yeah, this all stems back to a worker strike that took place at the shipyard in Cadiz, Spain. Work was brought to a stop as a result of the strike, and that meant that the Carnival Liberty, which was in dry dock at the time, work stopped on it. So they had to move the ship from Cadiz to Marseille, France, so that the necessary work can be completed. This resulted in the ship's return to service being delayed, and that meant that a cruise was canceled. It's the July 6th cruise, so it would be taking off this weekend, in fact. Carnival was so unhappy about the situation that they not only filed a lawsuit that boils down to, I think when you do the translation from euros to dollars, it's around a $5 million lawsuit. But rumor has it they're also considering basically pulling their business from this particular shipyard. That would be a really big deal, as right now, Carnival has around 11 different dry docks planned at that same yard. As for guests who were impacted by this, they were given a full refund and a 100% future cruise credit. And they'll also have like certain flight-related expenses and things like that reimbursed up to a certain dollar amount. But it could, the thing that I find most interesting in this story is what the aftermath will be. I mean, if they have to change 11 dry docks, that doesn't just impact the Cadiz, Spain facility, it also impacts all of the other facilities that these ships would then have to go to. It could also impact the scheduling, like you can't just suddenly say to, a different dry dock shipyard, hey, we've got 11 ships. Can you squeeze them into your agenda? Because these things are booked long in advance between dry docks and new builds. So who knows how this will ultimately play out.
Speaking of lawsuits, dozens of passengers have filed one against a division of Carnival Corp UK.
Yeah, that's right, Doug. A firm representing numerous passengers is suing P&O, which operates under the Carnival Corporation umbrella. The lawsuits, and there are several, stem from passengers who wound up with various largely gastrointestinal issues after their sailings. One of the plaintiffs in the case says that boarding of their cruise was delayed by several hours they were told it was for, quote, enhanced cleaning, close quote, which obviously indicates there was a problem on the sailing beforehand. And yet, when they were finally boarded, this person says that their stateroom was absolutely filthy. There was just dirt, dust, not dirt, dust. And they said there were contact lenses found on the floor. It clearly had not been well cleaned. The cruise line says they're investigating the various allegations, although how you do that, months down the line, I'm not really sure. There are potentially big ramifications for cruise lines here, especially if the lawsuit happens to prevail. Because I think if that happens, then anytime we see an outbreak on a ship, you're going to see people filing lawsuits, wanting their piece of the pie. This has happened in the past. We've seen lawsuits filed before. So it's potentially very problematic for the industry as a whole if this becomes a big problem. Of course, the easy way to avoid that is to make sure that your ships are as clean as possible.
Yeah. And for the second time in a month, a panel of tempered glass has shattered on a Royal Caribbean ship. Thankfully, no one was hurt.
Yeah, this was the Symphony of the Seas. Now, you'll remember that about a month ago, it became kind of a big news story when a panel of glass right near the coastal kitchen shattered. It fell down on people. It could have been much worse than it was, but a crew member sort of saw what was happening and hustled people out of the way and was, rightly hailed as a hero. In this case, same ship, Symphony of the Seas. It was a rooftop glass panel above the solarium, which on royal ships is the adults only area. It's probably my favorite area on the ship. But apparently the panel did not actually fall. It just shattered, but stayed in place. It's interesting. You want to know what causes this, especially twice on one ship. We had someone call the cruise radio tip line and suggest that it had to do with strong vibrations as the ship was pulling into port. I know that when I was on MSC Meraviglia a while back, they had a shattered front window in one of the yacht club lounges. Apparently I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I was told a bird of some sort flew into it. And, normally that would be bad news for the bird, but it wouldn't really hurt the ship. But apparently did it at just the right angle that it caused the window to shatter. It did not, at least during my trip, it did not actually fall. The glass stayed in place and they eventually covered it with something. But, interesting to have two stories in a month on the same ship. You have to wonder what's going on there.
Thankfully, this next story didn't have a horrible, gruesome ending like it could have.
Yeah, this is one of those stories that it's not too fine a point to call it a miracle. When we do these types of stories about people going overboard, they almost inevitably have terrible endings. And certainly when you hear about a 5-year-old child going overboard, you just, a shiver runs down your spine. In this case, it was on the Disney Dream, and the 5-year-old apparently fell off the ship, and her father dove in afterwards. He found her, treaded water for 10 minutes while the crew was, going into hyperdrive, trying to get a tender to them, which they did, brought them on board. And there's been a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation about what happened, but we actually now have information directly from the Broward Sheriff's Department who are doing the investigation. And here's what they say. I'm going to read to you directly from the report. The incident occurred at approximately 11:30 Sunday, June 29th, on deck 4 of a Disney cruise ship, while the ship was in international waters somewhere between the Bahamas and Port Everglades. Broward Sheriff's Office detectives continue to investigate the moments before a 5-year-old girl lost her balance while sitting on a railing and falling backward through a porthole. After the girl's mother alerted her husband, who didn't see the incident, he jumped into the water to save his daughter. Broward Sheriff's Office detectives said after the 37-year-old father found his daughter, he treaded water until they were rescued by a tender that was launched by the ship. So, basically what I had said before, the father jumped in and was able to rescue his daughter. The detectives are still reviewing the case. They're still looking at the security video, which they say corroborates the statements from the family and cruise ship staff. They also say, and this is a direct quote from their statement, "This family is so blessed. It's great to be able to respond to good news rather than what could have been a tragic outcome." The word porthole here is a little bit deceptive, I think. When we think of a porthole, we think of an inside stateroom that has a porthole that you can look out of. If I'm not mistaken, Doug, and I've not been on a Disney ship, but I believe that the portholes they're referring to here are almost more like a cove balcony where it's sort of like a cutout, like it's built into the ship. Am I right there?
Yeah, this class of ship has the 5 big circle portholes just cut to the steel on deck 4 on both the port and starboard side. From the sound of the police report, she climbed up into that, and then she lost her balance and went backwards into the water.
Again, it's just, it's a miracle that this worked out the way it did. It could have so easily gone tragically awry. I mean, if the mother hadn't seen her go overboard, if the father hadn't jumped in to rescue her. And really, honestly, let's give really big props to the crew on board the ship who were so quickly able to get the tender boat into the water, get to them, and rescue them. The name of the father and daughter are not being released for their own, to protect their identities. But whoever they are, we're sending big, thoughts their way. And as the sheriff's department said, they really should feel blessed that this turned out as well as it did.
And just to kind of clear the air on this too, because a lot of comments, everyone is an armchair quarterback here, and they're saying it took them long enough to turn the ship around. But you have to remember, this is over 100,000 gross registered ton ship. You can't just turn the ship on a dime or you're going to flip the damn thing over. You got to make it nice and fluid when you turn these things.
Also remember, the whole thing, from the time that the little girl went overboard to the time that they were rescued, was 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Now, that 20 minutes, the 10 minutes that the dad was in the water treading and keeping his daughter, above water, that had to have seemed like an eternity to him. But in reality, it was a grand total of 20 minutes. Mm-hmm. And, we have reported on so many man overboard cases where it takes hours, for them to get to where they need to be and to find the person and to rescue them. So a 20-minute rescue, those people who are offering their critiques of the situation should probably take all the seats.
All right, we have one more story.
We do. And this, Doug, I'm going to turn to you because I think you have a little bit more information about this than I do. But the U.S. Embassy in Honduras sent out a message saying that their authorities are basically starting immediately. They're going to be requiring documentation to show proof of a measles vaccine for travelers coming from other countries, including the United States. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that I am vaccinated for the measles, but I'll be damned if I can figure out how to prove it, know? So what's the story here?
I've received dozens of emails on this. We have everyone from personal vacation planners at cruise lines to travel agents saying, what if my client can't find their proof of vaccine or can't get a negative measles test in time? Well, turns out that this was written a little bit before it was probably thought of. They have a lot of things to iron out still. I was talking to a lot of folks behind the scenes of this, and they were saying that cruise passengers are considered in-transit passengers. And at the time of recording, which is July 2nd at 4 p.m., that is still the case. They're not requiring anything if you're a cruise passenger. If you're coming in by a pleasure craft like a yacht or a speedboat, air or what have you, you will need to do this. But if you're a cruise passenger, you're in transit, then you are exempt at the time of recording. And if anything does change, you will have, trust me, a lot of communication from your cruise line.
And obviously, if there's a change, we'll update it and let people know. I think it's interesting that it's so interesting to me that if you're arriving by a yacht, which means, let's say there's 5 or 6 of you, not that I'm experienced in yacht travel, but let's just say there's 6 people on my yacht. They are all allowed to go traipsing around and, or they have to prove that they have their measles vaccines. But thousands of people coming don't have to prove it. That seems totally backwards to me. Like, you would think it would be the thousands of people who are, potentially, we don't buy into that whole cruise ship as a petri dish thing, but the general world does. You would think that they would look at that and say, those are the people we need to be concerned about, not the 6 people on a yacht. But, hey, we don't make the rules.
Again, if this changes, we will do an update. All right, staff writer Richard Sims, thank you, man.
Glad to be here.
Dan Skilken from tripinsurance.com is here to give us some commentary on a couple of news stories we covered over the past couple of weeks, especially how travel insurance would have helped these guests out. Hey, Dan.
Doug, thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, for sure. So last week during the show, Richard and I were talking about this crazy story where a couple was sleeping and then a pipe burst above them and splashed them in the middle of the night, got all over their clothes, their bed, and everything. So the question is, how would travel insurance cover you, no pun intended, in a situation like that?
Well, I got to tell you, I hope they comp the cruise. I hope they gave them future cruises. Can you imagine the kind of emotional scars when you're laying in bed on a cruise ship and you're doused with that kind of crud? And I feel bad for them too. I will say that, in terms of compensation for the cruise or the fact that they moved them to another cabin, they're not going to get coverage or relief in the travel insurance plan for the actual cruise itself, but they would be able to file for coverage for their clothes and their baggage if it's damaged and the cruise company hasn't covered the cost of that baggage repair. Baggage insurance in a travel insurance plan is always secondary to what you're going to get from a carrier, from the airline or from the cruise company if they lose your bags or they damage it. And a lot of times that's covered by, there are treaties that cover the amount the airlines or a cruise company would have to pay for damaging or losing your bag. So they would get some compensation in that regard for the baggage, but they're probably not going to get compensation for the rest of the cruise. There is there's a feature this is a new feature that is coming up in several premium travel insurance plans on the market today, which is called trip interruption for any reason. So people may be familiar with cancel for any reason. That allows you to cancel 2 days before you depart, and it'll pay 75% of your cancellation penalties. But what if the trip just sucks? What if the trip is really bad? And you're thinking, look, I'm just going to bail on this. I want to go home. In this particular case, they're doused with this crud in their cabin, and they said, I'm done. I want to go home from this cruise. If they had interruption for any reason coverage, they would have gotten 75% back on the balance of their cruise that they were losing, plus the extra cost to get them home, if that was a decision that they decided to make.
While we're speaking of baggage, we always hear the stories of the cruise line dropping the baggage into the harbor when they're loading it onto the ship. Would travel insurance help you in that case?
It will. It absolutely will, particularly if it's been damaged to the point where you can't wear it anymore or it's been ruined. All you have to do is get a receipt from the cruise line or from the airline that says that they acknowledge that the damage did occur. You need a third-party verification that you actually had damage. Gotcha. You can't just tell the travel insurance company, well, I had baggage damage, but they have no third-party proof of it. They won't cover that. Gotcha. But if you've got third-party proof, that they'll document that they dropped your bag in the water, and the proof that they didn't pay you anything for it other than maybe a little bit of laundry service. But if the clothes were ruined, yes, you're absolutely covered for that. Sometimes the baggage coverage can be as high as $2,000, $2,500 in a travel insurance plan to cover the contents of your bag.
And then the story Richard just spoke about Carnival Cruise Line having to cancel the July 6th cruise of Carnival Liberty from New Orleans because of a workers' strike out there in Cadiz, Spain. The ship wouldn't get done in time. They had to move it to Marseille, France to complete the transformation there. Would travel insurance help the people on that cruise who were booked? Obviously, Carnival's given a refund because they canceled the cruise and giving $200 in non-refundable fees like for airlines or such. But if you booked a hotel room on, say, hotels.com, pre-cruise, non-refundable in New Orleans, would trip insurance help there?
This is a tricky problem. So if you've bought airfare, if you've bought hotels or other things associated with the trip, and you've insured them on a regular travel insurance plan, and then Carnival canceled the cruise, if all of those were non-refundable and you actually suffered a loss, most travel insurance won't cover that. Now, a cancel for any reason policy definitely will. And so a lot of times, that's what I travel with a cancel for any reason policy. They cost a little bit more, but they're the best coverage you can get. And in the case where Carnival cancels and you have to cancel the whole trip, you're going to get 75% of your cancellation penalties back. Plus you get the $250 from Carnival. But to be honest, the $250 is really not very much. Like you said, if you've got prepaid hotel or things like that. A lot of times, Doug, if they booked their hotel or their flights through Carnival, will Carnival also take care of that cancellation and give them a refund on them?
Yeah, if you book your air through Carnival Air, you're taken care of there. As far as I know, Carnival doesn't do hotel reservations, though.
Exactly. And so you really sort of you got to look at, should I get refundable tickets? A lot of the airlines now will give you full credit towards future flights. So that works out okay. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times the airline, and a lot of people, when they're booking a hotel, they can cancel the hotel 48 hours in advance and get a full refund a lot of times, even on a prepaid. You just got to check and see what's going on. But typically, travel insurance won't cover you for all of those lost expenses if Carnival cancels a cruise.
All right, Dan, we'll leave it there and pick up next week where we'll have some questions on hurricane season and travel insurance questions. Dan, if anyone has a question for you that we haven't answered, how can they get a hold of you?
Doug, please email us at support@tripinsurance.com. Send us your questions. Even if you're not buying travel insurance from us, we're happy to help you. If you've got a question or an issue with a claim, we've helped countless people that had questions about claims or problems or just wanting to understand what provisions plans were or how to buy them. Just let us know. Support@tripinsurance.com. We're here to help.
All right, Dan Skilken, president of tripinsurance.com. As always, thank you, my friend.
Doug, thank you for having me on.
The world is constantly changing. Your place for news is still the same. Online and on demand at cruiseradio.net.
A big question we get at Cruise Radio is, how do I know if I need trip insurance? Simple answer. If you're getting on a plane, taking a road trip, or getting on a cruise ship, you need to have travel insurance. Hey, it's Doug Parker from my friends at tripinsurance.com. Not only does tripinsurance.com protect your vacation investment, but it also gives you peace of mind in case anything were to go wrong on your trip. How do they do it? They offer 3 different types of trip insurance policies. Good, better, and best. One policy for every vacation budget. But it doesn't just stop there. They're up to 40% lower when you shop around on other comparison sites. Plus, tripinsurance.com offers 24-hour customer support before, during, and after your trip, online claims assistance, and travel alerts to let you know what's going on at your destination. But find out for yourself. Check out tripinsurance.com.
Have a tip or a lead on a news story? Let us know. Email tips@cruiseradio.net.
Kurt and his wife just returned from a 4-night cruise on MSC Seashore. It was at a Port Canaveral to Ocean Key and Nassau. He joins us on the line to talk about it. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, Doug. I'm doing fine.
Yeah, excited to hear from you about this sailing because you cruise exclusively with Royal Caribbean. You're like diamond with them. And with the exception of Virgin Voyages that you did recently, you're strictly an all Royal Caribbean guy. So what made you want to pull the trigger on this MSC cruise?
Like you mentioned, we're mostly Royal Caribbean, but we did want to branch out and try other lines. And the Virgin trip got scheduled ahead of this one. And we drove down to Florida. And the drive is so long, I thought, why don't we tack something else onto it to kind of make it worth it? And so I just searched for whatever I could find. MSC popped up, and it's a line that I've wanted to try for a long time. But I wasn't sure based on the reviews whether I'd like it or not. So the short one was a good thing to add.
How was the embarkation for MSC compared to your Royal Caribbean sailings? And you go to board MSC Seashore. How was the embarkation process there? And do they do anything different, or is it the same that you were used to on Royal Caribbean and most recently Virgin Voyages?
It's not bad. It's been a long time since I sailed out of Port Canaveral, so I don't know what to expect necessarily is normal there. But the parking is pretty easy. We parked in a garage, walked over to the terminal. We got on right away. The embarkation was really smooth. So it's very similar, and it was not a problem at all.
You're on board the ship. First impressions of MSC. It's
really pretty. The ship is really beautiful, and it seemed, we enjoyed what we saw right away. The only thing we were let into our cabin right away so we could drop our stuff. So, I was hoping to get rid of passports and stuff like that. When we got there, our safe was not working. It needed a new battery. So I really couldn't drop anything after all. And the next things we had to do were the muster, which is watching a TV program. And then you have to dial a number, and then you have to go check in after that. And the surprising thing was, once we'd done those things, I went up to do the muster check-in with the staff, and they just checked my wife in, despite the fact that she was still sitting a floor below me. So I don't know. That's a long first impressions, but that it was kind of, it felt a little disjointed sometimes.
It was a little bit better on the MSC World America, because the other sailings I've taken on MSC lately, it was dialing the number, watching the video, checking in. It was like, okay, what are we dialing the number for? But yeah, glad to see that you made your way through it. So cabin, what kind of stateroom did you have for your cruise, and what did you think of it?
We had a balcony. It was pretty nice. The storage space was adequate. There were the safe didn't work, when we first got there, but it got repaired. And it's a nice stateroom. I thought it was good.
As far as space in the cabin and also the bathroom, what were your thoughts?
It had a tub with a half glass that didn't slide. So it was kind of, I was wondering whether I was going to get the floor wet or something,
right.
But really it was spacious enough, I guess. The only thing, it seemed like the gap between that wall and the wall surrounding the toilet, those two areas, was not very wide, and the toilet paper roll holder was kind of falling off the wall. And we didn't ask for that to be repaired or anything, but it's obviously got bumped because it's kind of skinny in there.
Coming from Royal Caribbean, I'm curious because a lot of folks say that ship resembles the Quantum class a lot. I'm curious if you saw any similarities.
Maybe a little bit, but it's a lot. It's got more of a centrum kind of area in the middle. So it's got several screens, and those are always going. It felt like more like an older style ship with that, smaller center area than an elongated area. I found it a little difficult to figure out where I was going. We were on for 4 days, and normally I'm on longer. And it took me a while to understand where I was at any given time. I kept making a lot of turns and then backtracking because it was going the wrong way.
Are they still doing where you have to check your credit card into a kiosk once you get on board?
No, you can do that ahead of time, but I have to say their app is kind of terrible because it took me a long time, and I ended up making some calls because I did not want to do that.
Yeah.
But based on, I understood that was something that happened in the past, and there were long lines for people to do it, to check their credit card in manually. I didn't see anyone at those machines, so it probably wouldn't have taken that long to do that if you were on board.
All right, food on board MSC Seashore, and we'll start at the buffet area. And if my memory serves me correct, gosh, it's been almost 4 years, but there are 2 buffets on that ship, right?
There are 2, and they're kind of separated by the hallway. There's not, it's like one long buffet that gets split by the elevator banks.
Right.
So the the rear one tends to be used less often. So it tends to be a little less crowded. That's what I found. But it's kind of an old style layout where everything's linear and not in little stations.
Yeah.
So it crowds up. If you want something that's further along, then you have to wait in the line and, wait till you can approach that item, unless, there's no line there whatsoever. But it's not like you can just pop up, grab something and walk away. So it does take a little time to get through it. If it's crowded, it's kind of miserable.
I take it you prefer the island concept at the buffet instead of linear.
Oh, yeah. Because, there can be an item like 5 items down, and you don't want to cut in front of somebody to get that, and an island, people can kind of walk up and get whatever they want. Sometimes there's a lineup, but very rarely do people line up at those. Usually they can get what they want and move on pretty quickly.
Main dining room. What time dining did you have? What dining room were you in? And what did you think of the food throughout your 4 nights?
It's hit and miss. It's really odd. I don't remember the dining room we were in. Central Park, I think. And I can't tell you how that compares to the others. That's right. There were some that were kind of split up and smaller. It's fairly big. I can tell you the staff is hustling to get tables done. And we had the fastest meals I think I've ever had on a ship. And it's tough to get to know your serving staff. Even though we had a traditional dining, it was really quick. And they also split up the bar staff. So I tried to order a drink, and the assistant waiter said, no, we'll have to send a bar person over to you. But then no one ever came in the time that we were there. So it's really disjointed. I probably keep coming back to that word because it's not that easy to get anyone's attention because they're constantly on the move somewhere.
Going back to the food being hit or miss, what was, subpar for you?
Some things were pretty good. I can remember French onion soup was pretty good. Some of the proteins were not very good. My wife had chicken and it was not good. It was kind of dry and rubbery. I had some sort of pork loin thing and it was really not very good. I had to cut a lot of it away to eat any of it, and it just didn't feel worth the effort. The Italian things, the pastas and so forth, those are really good. I enjoyed that, but some of the proteins were pretty poor.
Fair enough. Any specialty dining?
We did lunch at Ola Tacos, and that was good. Not very attentive for a specialty restaurant. I'd ordered something and the waiter forgot about it. And by that time I was full and I said, forget about it. It's fine. There's all you can eat charge, which is about $25, I think. But if you order a la carte off the menu, we had plenty. And I think I spent $35, maybe something like that. So between the two of us, so if you're not going to really go crazy, that it's probably a good idea to just order a la carte.
And how was the entertainment on this 4-night cruise? Pretty
good. They have a couple of shows. I don't think they have a band. I think it's to soundtracks. The shows were good. It was jukebox musical kind of stuff. And I liked it. It was more upbeat music, kind of more modern music than some of the shows I've seen on Broil.
And then how about the entertainment outside of the theater?
Good, generally. There were some bands playing on some of the locations, and there was always, seemed like there was very frequently things in the center area where it was multi-floored. And that seemed to, that drew a pretty good crowd. But then they also had some other venues where there were things. There was a jazz location, and I kind of wandered into that. It was a little bit slow and maybe too old for what I was looking for. But there were other bands that were pretty good.
On that ship, the first sea day is right after you leave Port Canaveral. You have a day at sea. So with that said, how were they as far as crowds and congestion?
There were a lot of people because it happened to be spring break, and I didn't factor that into it. And we just got off Virgin, and I didn't really have to account for it there. So there were a lot of kids. I mean, we looked for loungers, and we could find them. The thing that I'd like to point out, I guess, is there's no shade on this ship. It's just not there. All of their pool deck areas are wide open to the sun, and I need a little shade. So what we found is that we moved to deck 8, and then the ship itself was shade. And, we got on either side, depending on which way the sun was. I mean, buffets, everything was pretty crowded, and it seemed to be because there were a lot of kids on board.
How about the casino as far as being able to find a slot machine or a table and the smoke situation in and around it?
Seemed too bad. We went to the casino bar and stayed for a little while. I did play on a machine that they were turning into a slot tournament machine at one point. So while I was playing, they were shutting other machines down around me, but it was pretty good. But the smoke wasn't that bad. I've never seen this before, but there was someone vaping pot next to me. It surprised me quite a bit because I don't know if you're allowed to vape it definitely was pot.
Huh. All right, so you had your day at sea. You get to the Ocean Key Marine Reserve, MSC's private island. So in the past couple of months, you've been to Virgin Voyages destination Bimini. You've also been to Perfect Day. So what did you think about Ocean Key?
Wildly different experience. I mean, we really like Bimini Beach Club, and I guess that's the key, is that it's a beach club with a pool, and we'd rather be by a pool. We like the atmosphere of being by a beach, but being actually on the beach is probably not what we're in favor of necessarily. But so the Ocean K is nice, but it's kind of low growth because it's new. So there aren't a lot of large trees. There's not a lot of shade. Again, it kind of carries from the ship, right? It's tough to get shade. There's some umbrellas. We sat by the lighthouse point, and prior to the sailing, I bought an umbrella because they don't have that many umbrellas. So they charge you to rent an umbrella, and then somehow you carry it out. I found a chair that did have an umbrella, although I had to kind of piece it together. And so I didn't have to go get that umbrella that I rented previously. But the chairs there are kind of strange because they have like what look like folding poker chairs. I mean, just like folding table chairs laying out on the beach. So some are kind of kick back and relax, and others are really upright and not comfortable from what I could tell. We were fortunate enough to get some that were fairly comfortable.
Curious as to what beaches you went to, or beach.
We went to the Lighthouse Beach.
Okay.
We got there fairly early. We saw an umbrella and we said, let's go for it. So that's where we were. And it was located pretty well because there's a restroom right there. There was a bar right there. There were some food trucks right behind us. So it was okay. Although we didn't eat on the island. So I don't know what that experience is like.
They love showing off the Lighthouse nighttime show. Did you get to catch that as you were pulling out?
We pulled out before it got dark.
Okay.
So I was kind of hoping to, but we left, I don't know what time we left, but fairly early. So no, I did not see the Lighthouse show. I was really looking forward to it. In fact, I'd scheduled being on, I think we were on the starboard side because I understood that would be the side that we could see the Lighthouse show from.
How would you rank the three you've been to recently? Perfect Day, Bimini Beach Club, and Ocean Key.
Bimini is pretty good. I mean, it's got what I like on Coco Cay. So that one might be a little bit higher ranking than Coco Cay for what I enjoy. The food is good. It's small and compact. so it doesn't feel as overwhelming. Ocean Cay was my least favorite out of them.
Fair enough.
It was fun. I played in the waves for a little while, but I'd rather just chill and have cocktail service.
Sure. I hear you. Your next port of call was Nassau, Bahamas. Did you do anything special there?
No, it was raining. I really planned on going out, and my wife hadn't seen the new port area yet, but I couldn't talk her into going out in the rain, so we stayed on the ship. It was kind of patchy, but it was enough that you could tell something was coming later.
You leave the private island. You're back in Port Canaveral the next day. How was debark?
No, it was fine. It was about as easy as it was getting on. There weren't any issues.
Self-assist or checking makes a big difference. Which one did you do?
We always check the night before, and we were on this trip for a couple of weeks, so we had a lot of luggage all around, more than we needed for this 4 days.
What time does MSC want you out of your cabin by?
8, I think, if I remember right.
And then
I think we were off. We didn't just walk off. We had breakfast. And then we went into a lounge. It was probably closer to 9:30 or so before we got off.
And everything goes smoothly at the luggage hall?
Yeah, that was no problem. I don't think we had a real favorable number, so we were kind of stuck in the lobby for a little while.
Did you status match before this cruise?
I did, yeah. And that actually got me an hour in the thermal spa. And that sounded really cool. But I made a list of what I called broken stuff. And the thermal spa had tile chairs, and they had 3. So it didn't seem like enough for the size of the ship. And then one of them didn't work. It wouldn't heat up. So it was a little disappointing. The whirlpool was out in half of it. And the lockers all needed new batteries. Almost all of them, I couldn't lock anything up in them because the batteries were dead. A few of them worked, but not very many. And so there's just a lot of TLC, I think, needed on the ship. But I did status match. I got that. I could have gotten an F1 virtual simulator ride, but I'd kind of forgotten about it, so I didn't do it.
I can't wrap my head around this. 5,600 passengers on this ship. I realize not everyone is going to the spa, but you said 3 thermal chairs. Just 3 total or 3 in service?
No, they're just 3.
That's bizarre to me for 5,600 people.
Pretty crowded in that thermal spa. So, it was. I didn't think it would be as crowded as it was, but I had to wait for some woman to get out of the chair. Somebody was kind of, they were doing a chair hog thing where they had a towel over it. And I chased her down and said, "Hey, are you done with that?" Because she was walking away. So not nearly enough. And I went back and looked at some other ships, and I said, "Wow, this is loaded with those thermal chairs." So.
Okay, so with your status match, I assume you matched it with your diamond with Royal?
Yes.
Okay. That means an hour in the thermal suite. What else did you get with the match?
We got a little bit of a discount in the gift shop. And that was something to note is the gift shop was really reasonable. I bought a little Lego cruise ship, and I think the original price on it was like $17. And they brought it down 10% or something for me because of the status match. For gift items. So it was, that was a nice perk. There was supposed to be some sort of welcome gift, but they said they don't give that out for shorter sailings because I asked about it. I don't think it was much. I think it was like a shopping bag or something, but.
How about the chocolate ship?
Yeah, we did that actually. We didn't go to you could go to a demonstration or you could just purchase what they give you at the demonstration, and then you had the opportunity to pick what chocolate you wanted. So somebody sold us on it when we were sitting watching a band, and we said, "Yeah, okay, we'll do that." And so we bought a chocolate chip, and we still have, and I don't know when we're going to eat it, but we haven't eaten it yet.
I bought 5 of the ships for gifts on MSC World America. I wound up eating 4 out of 5 of them at the airport because my flight was so damn late.
I'm surprised it didn't get eaten on the way home. I thought it was cool, and I wanted to show somebody, but we haven't done it yet.
My intentions were right, but I was so hungry at the Miami airport once your flight's delayed 5 hours. Anyway, so anything else you could think of from the status match there with the chocolate chip, the shop discount, the hour thermal suite, the welcome gift wasn't really included? Anything like as far as, I don't know, priority dining or anything?
No, I kind of had to fight to get a table for 2. I don't think they don't get assigned ahead of time. That was another kind of irritating thing on the first day. So I went to look at my table and they said, well, we don't have it. You're going to have to find out when you get here. You go down to some other desk that was not by the dining room. So I did that. And they said, no, you've got a table for 4, and it would just be some random folks sitting next to us. And that's not what we were looking for. So they did change me to a table for 2, but I wasn't like being belligerent or anything. I was obviously disappointed, and somebody that was working the scheduling had someone else lean over and say, here, this is how you do it, because it didn't seem like you could figure out how to make it happen, and somebody else did it. So I didn't have to. We got that set up on the first day. I don't think we got any priority from that. I wanted to do, I didn't have the yacht club, and I kind of wanted to see what it was like without the yacht club, because I've always seen all these reviews and everyone's got the yacht club. So I was like, well, what's the regular experience like? It's okay, but it's not as good as it could be.
Any first-time tips for someone sailing MSC Seashore or MSC Cruises for the first time?
Well, like I mentioned, there's no shade by the outboard door pools. So if you need some shade, go to deck 8. You could sit on the sides of the ships, and that's not too bad. Or the jungle pool. But there was a bit of a sewage smell in the jungle pool area. So, and it's a little, it's kind of steamy in there because it's closed off. The buttons on the elevators. If you go, please push the button for every person that you have, because elevators would arrive that would say that it's your elevator because they're destination elevators. Mm-hmm. And they were jam-packed with people because they pushed it once for a party of 8 or something, right? So the elevator had no idea that they had that many people in their party. There's a cocktail lounge forward of the specialty restaurants because they're all kind of grouped on the back of the ship. And that cocktail lounge is really chill, and the service were really nice there. So I liked hanging there. It was a nice place. There's no entertainment, but it's a nice, quiet place to be because it was crowded. So there weren't lots of quiet places to be. Pizza is good if it's the round pizza, and that's on the buffet, because there aren't any grab and go places. It's really just main dining room and buffet, which is kind of strange because there's no like special pizza place. There's some ice cream places at a charge, but there's no regular food other than the buffet. It's open late, which is nice, but there's not much other than that. Watch the safety video right away in the cabin as soon as you can and dial the number. Because if you don't realize you have to do that, you'll have to make a return trip and go watch it.
A couple of questions and one comment then. The cocktail lounge you were just talking about, what deck is that on?
I think it's 8.
8? Okay.
No, it's not way in the back. It's forward of the restaurants. The restaurants are pushed towards the back of the ship. I think there's a entertainment lounge behind them, but all of the sushi place and the steakhouse and all that stuff, other than the taco place, that's on a different deck. But a lot of them are in that back area. I'm pretty sure it's deck 8 because I think we walked by it when we were going to our lounge chairs.
That's one thing that cannot be stressed enough. Push the button for the elevator. If it's a smart elevator, for how many people are in your party. I've seen it so many times on MSC World America and some Carnival ships where, let's just say a party of 10 will be trying to go up a couple decks, and they would just push it once and get into a full elevator, and then everyone's like, whoa, what do we do? You have to push it one time for every person that is on there. 10 people, 10 times, or you're going to get gridlock. It's like, yeah, because everyone has to push it one time. It doesn't know how many people are standing there waiting to get in.
Right. Yeah. And I was on the Facebook group and I had some people argue with me that, no, that's not how you do it. You just push it once. And I said, no, it doesn't know how many people are there. That's the whole point of how those work. So, I looked it up because I got back and I even looked up the company that made it, and you push it as many times as you need to. They could make the instructions better because it doesn't tell you to do that.
Sure.
There's no placard. There's nothing on the controls that say push it once for every person. There's nothing that tells you that. I mean, they could even put like after you push the button, you push how many people you have on another keypad, but they don't.
What was the biggest highlight of the cruise?
I liked it. The ship is beautiful. I mean, it's a really nice looking ship. There were the entertainment was good. Some of the food was really good. It was kind of like, I got done and I said, this is okay. And for the right price, I'd do it again. I didn't hate it, but, it would definitely have to be the right price. And probably not when it's spring break. It was just way too many kids on there. And some of them were bored, you could tell, because they were wandering around kind of.
Was the value there for what you paid for the cruise?
Yeah, I would say so. It was pretty reasonable. And we had a drink and Wi-Fi included with it. So if you consider that, yeah, it was pretty reasonable.
We've been talking with Kurt about his 4-night cruise on MSC Seashore, round trip from Port Canaveral. Kurt, as always, great talking to you, my friend, and thank you so much for this detailed review.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Dougie, let's see what we got for you, buddy. Cruise Radio is produced at the tripinsurance.com studios in Jacksonville, Florida. Get cruise news, ship reviews, and money-saving tips every Thursday on Cruise Radio. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the show. If you want to help spread the word, give Cruise Radio a 5-star review. Find Cruise Radio where you listen to your favorite podcast or online at cruiseradio.net. I'm your announcer,